Hello, Ryan.
Hey, how's it going?
Good. Thanks for coming by.
Oh, thanks for having me. I'm happy to be here.
Yeah. So I thought that before we dive right into consulting,
Mhm.
you can give a quick intro of yourself and your backstory.
Yeah, sure. If you want the whole story, so my name's Ryan. I like starting my story way off in high school. In grade 9, I assembled a computer, spurred an interest in engineering, decided to go to school for computer engineering, later switching to systems. During that time, I did about 2 years of pre-graduate experience. First at Ontario Lottery and Gaming, had a short stint there, then moved over to Scotiabank.
Mhm.
Scotiabank was very data focused. And at the end of my undergrad, I was actually offered a role to come back in data and analytics engineering, part of their elusive rotational program. I realized that I like talking. I like being in front of people. And sorry, I keep looking at the camera too. Which one would you prefer?
You can just look at myself.
Okay, I'll look at you. At Scotiabank, got the role, and I decided, you know what? I don't think programming 30, 40, 50, 60, 70 hours a week, whatever it is for me. I like doing it.
Hmm.
I like being around it, but yeah, just not for me. So decided to go do an MBA right out of my undergrad. Did that at Wilfrid Laurier. Strategy consulting really appealed to me. I thought, hey, I could use some of my analytical skills as well as leverage the interpersonal skills I have. You know, be a little bit more extroverted, build relationships, etc. So got an internship at IBM in strategy consulting, which is kind of funny because I said, hey, I don't want to program. And then I went right to, a tech company. Yeah. So, but I'm not doing a lot of programming now. It's a lot more strategy work. It's a lot more PowerPoint, and I absolutely love it. During that time there, I had an opportunity to do an engagement with the sustainability team, and it went really well. And they asked me to come back to the sustainability team. And now, it would have been 4 weeks ago, I just started full-time role post MBA with IBM sustainability consulting.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Straight to a senior consultant, I see.
Yes.
Yeah. So was it hard switching from like a STEM Bachelor of Engineering major towards consulting, or did MBA really help you?
The MBA helped me. Yeah, I knew that the MBA was going to help me make that transition, and I always knew I wanted to do an MBA. It was just a matter of, do I do it now or do I wait a few years and do it later? And I just realized, I'm not generalizing right now. I still want to be specific, but I want to make that transition.
Right.
So that's why I made the transition, and here we are.
And you did it pretty quickly right after undergrad, right?
I did it literally right after. So I graduated undergrad in 2022. I did the MBA in 2023. Now we're in 2024, and I'm at IBM. Yeah.
Because I know that a lot of MBA programs, at least the one I was researching, they require certain years of experience before you actually go into MBA, typically like 3 or 2 years minimum.
Yeah. So I had the same issue in a lot of the programs I couldn't apply to because of that. They wouldn't accept the pre-graduate experience as graduate experience, even though my pre-graduate experience was very strong. So because of that, I had limited options, but I liked the options that were in front of me, and I got to do another co-op. So I now have done, 6, 7, 8 co-ops at this point, something crazy like that. So I'm happy to be here and chat and share some of my knowledge, my knowledge of getting those co-ops.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's. I want to first dive into a bit of MBA because I know that MBA and consulting is super related, and the transition from Bachelor of Engineering towards MBA is also pretty common.
Yeah.
So on that, how was the composition of your class? Was all of them also people with no full-time years of experience like you, or there was super diverse?
It was pretty mixed. We had a group of co-op students who were in the co-op program. They were right out of undergrad or just 1 or 2 years. And then those who didn't have co-op were a little bit farther along. So we had a good mix, but I'd say the average age was still about 25, 24, somewhere around there. It was pretty diverse in terms of the degrees and the background. So we had probably about 30 to 40% BBA. We had 10 to 15% engineering, 10 to 15% sciences, another, rounding it out, arts, political science degrees, that sort of thing.
Do you keep track on where these people have ended up?
Yeah, I do actually. I keep a track on a few of them. Some of them have been consulting. Some of them are still looking for MBA level work. A lot of them actually did 8 months of co-op instead of 4. I just did 4. So I know a lot of the co-ops are still in co-op, or they just finished their co-ops and now they're back wrapping up their last term.
All right. So you're speed running your career journey.
Yeah, not exactly. I mean, I took 5 years from my undergrad. And did almost 7 years of school total. So
Yeah.
There's two sides of looking at that.
Okay. And when I was looking at this, I decided to see what is the composition of the people's bachelor who are working in consulting, and I want you to guess what percentage of people who work in consulting are engineers.
Oh man,
So
that's a
Bachelor
great
of
question. So is this strategy consulting or is this like just broad consulting?
That's broadly consulting.
Oh, broad consulting. It's got to be close to like 50%.
So it's 30% engineering. So it's still the most common major.
Okay. Okay. 30%.
And the thing that surprised me the most is that finance and accounting and general commerce is only 10%. So I would expect it to be like much more. They still split to business management and economics. So like I think together they take around 20%, but engineering, so you're more likely to be a consultant with a Bachelor of Engineering than in a Bachelor of Business like commerce. And
I think that makes sense. A lot of the engineers, they get very specialized in a specific thing, and most consulting isn't general. It's actually very highly technical. It's very highly specialized, and you're paying by the hour because this person knows something very specific that your business needs. So that does make a lot of sense.
Right. Okay, so one more thing about MBA before we move on to your experience in IBM.
Sure.
So I know, based on my research, again, there's a huge difference in terms of a post-MBA salary between US and Canada.
Yeah.
And again, the difference is amazing.
Yeah.
So the average MBA salary for top 10 Canadian schools is 82,000 Canadian dollars, and for top 10 US schools, it's 170 USD, which is 230 Canadians. It's 280% higher. And I think we all have an idea that like US MBAs they pay significantly better. When you were applying to your MBA, did you have an idea to maybe do it in US, or you always had your eye on Canada?
Well, I think if I'd waited, I would have maybe decided to look more towards the United States. But just because of where I was in my career, I just decided an MBA here made more sense. I did still see an appreciation if you look at my first offer or the few offers I had coming out of my undergrad versus the opportunities I had coming out of my MBA. It was a valuable experience from a monetary perspective. So yeah, I mean, I looked at both sides, and I don't want to say if I had to go back because I have no regrets. I'm glad I did it now. I'm glad I pushed now. But if I were to recommend someone else who has the extra experience, I would say try and go down south. It's a bigger investment. It's probably going to be a little bit more stressful in terms of your financial situation short term. But just looking at the outcomes of some of those top schools, I think it's well worth it long term.
All right. Yeah. Because I imagine you get a discounted cost of MBA because you're Canadian, right? So I think there's still a big variation if you're Canadian not doing it here.
Yeah, and where I went to my school, it's even lower than that. You know, you go to an Ivy and it's $100,000 Canadian, or no, U of T is $100,000 Canadian. I think Ivy's $83,000 Canadian. Put that into USD, and it's $100,000 is now $75,000. But in the States, doing a Harvard MBA or something similar is plus $200,000 USD, right?
Yeah.
So,
and surprisingly, even though Rotman and Western MBAs they rank the highest, they don't have the highest average post MBA salary. The highest one is something like University of Ottawa, which is 40,000 more than Rotman, which also really surprised me.
Well, I think one of the reasons for that, and I think this is so true. Like this is probably the most true thing with any credential, is the years of experience are more valuable than the credential itself. So for example, if you have an MBA program and you're taking a lot of students who are right out of their undergrad, a lot of the positions they're gonna compete for probably aren't MBA level roles. They might actually be roles that are maybe an in-between, or maybe they're now an analyst that's getting paid a little bit more. So you have students coming out of school, that's going to lower it down. But you also have people who do part-time MBAs and do MBAs, 5, 6, even executive MBAs. And the offers those people are going to get are going to be significantly higher. So when I was looking at the salary ranges for the schools, I was thinking about that too. I was saying, well, I feel like I should be ranking them based on salary. But I'm now looking at it and I'm saying, well, this school, the average years of experience beforehand is 5 years, let's say, and the average salary coming out is $120,000. But, something like, let's say, a McMaster, you look at theirs, their base is I think 75, 80, total comp 90, but their average years coming out of school, especially on the co-op side, is less than 2, right? So I think that's true for most things. PMP is like another example of that. One of the things that they advertise is people who have a PMP get paid more than people who don't on average, but you also need 3 years of experience to get a PMP, right? So years of experience are very valuable. You add that credential on there and, you can accelerate yourself even faster and even higher. But I think that's all I got to say about that.
All right. Okay. Thank you. Okay, let's slowly move on to your company, right? So
Sure.
IBM is not a traditional consulting company. When people think of consulting, they probably don't think of IBM first. Maybe you do, but I would assume people think of Big Four and MBB and all of this like pure strategy consulting. So can you give us like a brief introduction of what IBM is, modern IBM?
Sure, modern IBM. One thing I always like to say to people is that about IBM is you say IBM, right? And anybody over 40 knows exactly what IBM is. And well, they might not know what it does today, but they know that IBM is a very strong brand, and they're very impressed to hear the IBM brand. But then you ask someone who's under 40, and they look to you, glazed eyes. What is IBM? So it's a great question. IBM's a technology company. It's reinvented itself multiple times. It's most well known for its personal computers that it built way back in the day. And a lot of the mainframe stuff that they did and how they led computing. The name is International Business Machines. That's what they built. And that's what they were most known for. I'm pretty sure at one point they were the largest company in the world, though you might have to fact check me on that one.
We'll have a pop-up.
Yeah, we'll have a pop-up to see if I'm right about that. So, they've been in technology. They've been building computers. They've been reinventing themselves. Now they're almost entirely B2B. So business to business. I'm sure there's some product somewhere because it's a $200 billion company that is more B2C like. But the primary business, the primary focus, everything is all B2B. It's a lot of hybrid cloud. So you think of these big, huge rooms of servers. We're trying to put that online, right? We're trying to, or in a hybrid sense, you've got your on-premise or your on-premise servers, and then you also got your cloud servers. And you're doing optimization. So that's a big piece of the business, hybrid cloud. And then, of course, AI. They're really big into AI. Watson X is their big AI development platform. It's there to accelerate the development and deployment of AI models. So IBM's really trying to lean into the Gen AI, the cloud, a lot of these futuristic themes from a business to business perspective. So that's IBM. They also have a whole consulting arm. So this consulting arm, once again, it's mostly technology consulting. So what a lot of that is, and actually I see this a lot, where it's almost tied to a specific product or it's tied to a specific company. So for example, SAP is a practice within IBM and within, there's a whole SAP consulting industry.
And so consultants will do this one thing, right? They will work on this one product.
Implementations of SAP
among different companies.
Yeah, among different companies, right? So even though it's not an IBM product, SAP is partnered with IBM and will do that. And the Big Four do all of that as well. So that's what I mean by very specialized consulting, especially with tech consulting. That's actually where a lot of consulting is. I think in business school, you think of strategy consulting. You hear a lot about strategy consulting, but a lot of consulting is that more technical piece to it. So that's why it doesn't surprise me coming back to the engineering piece. So yeah, and then on top of that, a lot of companies, they need a tech strategy. They need to figure out how do we actually, what's the roadmap going to be for integrating this new technology into our business. So before you actually get to development, IBM has a whole strategy arm to figure that out, to put that into the vision of the company moving forward.
All right. So the way I see it is that technology is the overarching theme, and now within the technology you have these two main functions of consulting, which is implementation and strategy, right? And you focus more on strategy piece.
Yeah. They'll also refer to as strategy and execution, but yeah, strategy and implementation, very, very similar.
Yeah. And I think coming to the point that you described about how people over 40 would react to what IBM is, I know that their traditional services that they have been doing, they now split from IBM, and now it's a different company under IBM doing this, and now they are like primarily focusing on cloud computing, AI, and consulting services. And honestly, like looking at the amount of things that IBM has invented, I had the list when I was preparing for this.
Oh, tell me. I like I said, I just started 4 weeks ago. I know I did the internship there, but I know a bit about the history here and there, but please refresh me.
Okay, so I mean, number one thing is PC, which I think most people are known, which I think is already should be enough.
Yeah.
They invented ATM.
Oh, okay.
For the banking, they invented hard drive. They invented barcodes, which we use for all the scanning purposes. They have invented one of the first programming languages. They invented SQL programming language.
Oh wow!
And they invented the programming language on which something like 600 programming languages is currently based on, including Python. And this programming language is still used by NASA to run their computers to send people into space. They also, as you said about Watson, they were one of the first pioneers with AI, and they were one of the first.
I mean, Watson's been around forever.
Mobile phones,
right? Yeah. Oh, mobile phones as well. Look at that.
So there was like a huge amount of innovation going on.
Watson, the idea of Watson and AI have been around forever. Watson X is more of a Gen AI spin on it, and they're really focusing on that now.
Mm-hmm. And so one of the first AI programs that they have invented was for a machine to learn how to play checkers and improve based on its previous games. And they also invented one of the first. Used to be a chess player, so I was very interested to learn that they have built one of the first machines who have won the chess tournament among I think Garry Kasparov, one of the main chess player back at the time. So they built a machine which first beat human in chess. And they proved that AI is possible, because before that people didn't know that it actually is possible for a machine to learn based on its previous experience. Does this history of innovation has a significant role into day-to-day of IBM today, or it's mostly an interesting story and IBM today is a very different company?
Yeah, I mean, I think we're always reinventing ourselves. I hear that all the time, and I see that in slides all the time, and the executives are always saying that. We're always trying to reinvent. We're always trying to pivot. IBM's always been like that. There's different eras. I saw this one slide where they talked about the different eras, where I think the last era that we had was, what did they call it? Just software services. And now the current era that we're in is hybrid in AI. That's what they're calling it. Okay. But there's like 7 or 8 different eras.
And I think it's amazing strategy, because nothing, no matter how good the niche you're working on, it will never stay the same. So the idea that the company constantly needs to change is, I guess, a winning strategy. I know that IBM started with with producing clocks and even food. So from what it started, it shifted completely.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's what they're selling to their clients as well. They're selling that, hey, we're the innovators, we're the disruptors, we're the ones who are looking forwards, and we're going to show you how to do that, right? And that's a big part of what IBM's selling. So we need to be with the times. We need to know what AI is. We need to know what generative AI is, and we need to know how to speak to it.
Yeah, and I think the story of company pivoting to something else is not as uncommon. Like here in Canada, for example, historic example I know is Hudson Bay Company, which used to be an actual country, right? And do a fur trade.
So I got a really cool story on that one. So I was in Japan, and I went to the birthplace of Toyota, and I realized, or they walk you through it, and you don't realize this. Toyota started with weaving, and they made weaving machines.
Oh, wow.
Right? And when they were trying to automate these weaving machines, so I say weaving, but they started in textiles, right? That's the right terminology for it. When they started in weaving in textiles, they wanted to automate it, so they needed motors, right? And when they designed the motors and they designed the mechanisms and all those pieces, they actually learned how to then build an engine, right? And
from
that's
manufacturing to industrialization.
Yeah, exactly, right? And that's how they. It's so weird that Toyota, now the biggest car manufacturer in the world, or the second biggest car manufacturer in the world, they're always back and forth with Volkswagen there. They started as a textile company, so kind of crazy, right? Berkshire Hathaway's the same way, right? It was a textile company, and now it's a holdings company. So
I know Japan used to have the oldest continuously running business in the world. It was a hotel which was started in 9th century, and it's still going.
That's awesome. That's incredible. I'm not surprised.
Okay, so Is the main reason why you have chosen IBM in the first place is because you have this tech STEM background and you wanted to join tech consulting? Was that always a plan?
Yeah, I think it's a good question. I think my plan when I started the MBA was I wanted to explore. So I actually had a few different interviews in different areas, even outside of consulting. Sales and trading was one of them. I've interviewed for investment banking before. That was during my undergrad. And strategy consulting was always one that I was really keen on learning more about and hearing more about. And the opportunity with IBM came up because I went to a networking event. I met a recruiter. The recruiter referred me to another recruiter, and then I had the phone call, just a normal screening call. It was about 20 minutes, and then that came about. And as I learned more about the company, and as I learned more about what the role entails and what strategy consulting is, I really liked it. I did think it was a good fit because IBM is all about technology, and that's my background. Like I said, I built a computer there, and I also started a company way back when in my undergrad as well. And we can chat more about that experience because that was a whirlwind of a ride. But yeah, I think you're on the ball there, and to say that IBM, when the opportunity came to me for IBM, I definitely was thinking that along those lines. I thought it'd be a good fit.
Okay. Yeah, it makes sense. It's a good synergy of your past experience. You can explain to the recruiter when they ask you why IBM, right?
Yeah.
Is that the typical composition of people's background in IBM? So there are more techie people in consulting?
Yes. So once again, I'm going to split it up between strategy consulting and everybody else.
Okay.
Because strategy consulting is very
typical of you.
No, I mean, I don't mean to say everybody else and like throw them away. I just mean I need some sort of categorization
strategy consulting
to
people.
be able to. Yeah, I got to make buckets, right? I got to make buckets. So in the strategy consulting bucket, it's actually a lot of business students. There are some engineers here and there, but it's pretty diverse. There's a lot of people who come from Big Four. They move over to IBM because IBM's known for having a bit of a better work-life balance, and the pay is generous. So yeah, they moved over to IBM, and so you get more of a business, more typical strategy background. They're trying to be like Big Four strategy, right? They're trying to be like an MBB. That's the goal. I'm saying trying, but I think they're doing it fairly well. And then of course there's the technical side, and on the technical side, they're all technical, so they know how to use Amazon Web Services, right? They know how to use.
They're partnered with them, I know.
Yeah, they know how to use SAP. They know how to program. They know how to do all these other technical pieces, and they're really good at it. But to convey a story to an executive, that's what they struggle with. So you've got the side of the business that's really good at talking to executives, talking to businesses, and this is true across all businesses, right? This isn't just a critique of a single business here. This is something that's needed all around. It's that translation of the business technology, and you hear that all the time, but it is true. You'll see it. You'll talk to someone who is a little bit more technical, and they'll be explaining something to you, and you say, hey, I need you to explain it a different way to me so that I can go sell it to someone else.
And this is where you come
Or
in.
I need to do that, or I need to be able to listen to what they're saying and saying, okay. So you want to implement this system because it's going to make things faster. There's going to be more capacity. There's going to be more load. That's great. Okay. So what that actually means for the business is we're going to optimize costs, right? And that's then how you go and you sell it, right? We're going to be more operationally efficient. That's a big buzzword.
Okay. Is there a big division between strategy branch of IBM Consulting and non-strategy branch? Do people move around?
No, people move around a lot. Like IBM is very intertwined. The consulting people are always using.
Because I know Big Four is trying to kind of separate. They have Monitor, Deloitte, EY, Parthenon, Strategy, and for PwC. Yeah. There's still people moving around, but they try to establish it as a kind of separate brand. Is that what IBM is also doing, or there is no IBM strategy?
I would say there is IBM strategy. I would say they do have that brand, but from an internal perspective, they're not branding as if they're siloed and independent. There is still a significant amount of collaboration that's going on. I mean, a lot of the consulting work that we do will end up being PM-like works on more technical projects, or business analyst or business systems analyst work on more technical projects. So there still is a lot of collaboration that occurs where you can have that strategy component as well as that highly technical, that highly focused piece. And that's one of the things that actually makes, I think, IBM unique, and their ability to have a very unique strategy offering is that
with a good tech background.
Is the good, like, we know technology, right? That's our
We are
expertise.
technology.
We are technology, right? We invented technology. We didn't invent technology, but yeah, you get what I'm saying. That's the brand, that's the background. So yeah, I think it's really important for the business.
It establishes like added level of credibility for IBM, right? Because
Yeah.
they have this background of both innovation and actually inventing products that work. Right?
Yeah, exactly. Inventing products that work, and the people there, you know, you're getting tech people, right? That's the idea. I think at Big Four, you know, you're getting accounting, you're getting good finance people, or just maybe just more on the accounting side from a branding perspective, and then there's also strategy, right? With IBM, I feel like you're getting really, really good tech people who now also know the strategy.
Interesting. Okay. And I mean, it seems that IBM Consulting is doing very well based on the 2021, the revenue from the whole IBM, 31% consulting, 42% the software, so old school business. The profit is smaller, which makes sense because the consulting part is still growing, but it's a third of the business. Okay, now the last big bucket I wanted to talk about is actually sustainability, right? You worked in sustainability space as an intern, and now you're working there full time, correct?
Yeah.
So can you, I mean, it's kind of clear from the name, but tell us a bit about what for you sustainability consulting means.
Yeah, you know, that's a great question. I think it's just about helping clients figure out how to build practices that are going to have a longer life. And sustainability tends to follow more of a climate, and that's what we're really focused on, is more of that climate piece. You also hear a lot of ESG themes. And the term ESG being thrown around, but I'm hearing that less and less now, and it's more, I think, splitting up. And you've got people who are focused on inclusion and DEI and those pieces, and then you've got people who are focused on climate and environment, and that's where more I'm focused and where the focus has been for the kind of work that I've been doing. Very much on that climate risk piece, right? So carbon accounting, climate risk. I'm not doing the actual accounting, but the offering of sustainability at IBM is very much focused on how do we get the data, how do we set up the systems so that we can do that tracking.
Yeah, I was going to say, like, it now makes sense why someone would partner with IBM to do this because of this tech background. And I think, coming to your point about the split of ESG, I think this is a very positive thing because there's going to be less buzzwords and people just using ESG to talk about anything like abstractly good. And now they can actually focus on actual sustainability, actual inclusion, actual governance piece.
It's still like very common, right? But you know, I was just listening to Bloomberg a few weeks ago, and they were ramming the idea of ESG and the term ESG itself. And I'm hearing more and more of that rhetoric come around. And I don't think it's a bash on sustainability or climate. Let's say I don't think it's a bash on climate at all. I think it's more just a lot of people have different perspectives and have different values, and to shove all those values under one term just creates a lot of conflict and a lot of things people disagree with.
Okay, so you work in sustainability, and do you notice a lot of greenwashing in this space? A lot of people just pretending to care about sustainability to achieve their goals?
I think there's less and less of it. There's been a lot of pushback, right, on that piece. And
what kind of pushback?
Well, just social media, just social pushback.
People calling out companies who basically pretend to be green.
Yeah, exactly, right? And I think that's going to become more and more prevalent. I almost think the pushback is even less on the green and more on the social aspect.
Like what kind?
Like I just mean using, labor, slave labor, let's say, as an example, and touting themselves, sweatshops, and touting themselves as ethical companies, right? I think there's been a lot more pushback on that, and I think companies just need to be careful. Once again, I'm more focused on the banks and the financial institutions, and I know Scotiabank just released their climate report, and I had a quick look through that, and I don't think there's a lot of greenwashing going on the financial institution side. I know
they still use a lot of paper.
They still use a lot of paper, and I know the Canadian banks they fund a lot of the oil and gas. Some of them have been ranked as some like the worst companies for funding oil and gas
I
and
saw some
loans.
protests
Yeah.
this summer about RBC, Scotia, and BMO
Yeah.
about investing into arm production companies like Lockheed Martin and stuff like this.
Yeah. So I mean, there's still that, but RBC also just announced I think it's a $35 billion commitment to sustainable loans by 2030, something along those lines. So that amount of credit coming in, specifically tied to sustainably linked goals. So these are companies who have goals that are linked to sustainability, and even on that front, the energy companies are getting more and more focused on sustainability. At least the Canadian ones are. I was reading through Suncor's report the other day as well, their annual climate report, and I quite liked some of the stuff that I was seeing there. So, like I said, I think it's going to become less and less. And I think it's to become less and less because, first of all, there's going to be more visibility and more transparency. So you're not going to be able to hide it as much. And two, I forget what my second reason was. I heard this once in consulting. You know the rule of three. Everybody, do you know what the rule of three is?
That you always need to say 3 points.
You always need to say 3 points. I was only going to say 2 there, but I heard this once.
I heard it's 1, 3, or 5. So you're good. You said 1.
I said 1. No, but I also heard that you always go with the rule of 3, and then even if you only have 2, say 3, and then make the third one up on the go, just to fit the rule of 3.
Classic consulting.
I've heard that before. Anyways, yeah, we'll just go with that one primary reason. I think there's going to be a lot more visibility, a lot more transparency, and companies aren't going to be able to hide it as much.
Have you heard an anecdote about an owl in the forest who was a strategy consultant?
No, I have not.
So rabbits in the forest, they have a problem. Mm-hmm. They've been constantly eaten by wolves and foxes. So they decide to do something about this, and they go, well, we need to go to the smartest person in the forest, to an owl. So they go to an owl and say, owl, we've been eaten by foxes and wolves. Like, what should we do? So the owl thinks very hard and thinks, I think all of you need to turn yourself into hedgehogs. And they're like, wow, that's an amazing idea. How we do it? Oh, sorry, I'm a strategist, not a tactician.
Yeah, that's funny. That reminds me of another story. It's not consulting, but it kind of in the same realm. So do you know what the difference between an engineer and a mathematician is?
What?
So an engineer, let's say they're sleeping at home, they're in their bed, and there's a fire in the house. An engineer will get up, they'll see the fire, they'll go, oh no, I need a solution. They'll grab a fire extinguisher, grab it, put out the fire, and go back to bed. Mathematician will get up, see the fire, look at the fire extinguisher, and be satisfied that a solution does exist, and go back to bed, right?
Okay, so we're done with sustainability, and the last portion I wanted to talk about is about actual advices to those who either joining consulting soon or hope to join consulting. So a couple of general questions that I wanted to ask you, advice to your young generation of future consultants. The first thing is, what do you think is the single most important skill that the person needs to either have or obtain to be successful in joining consulting?
Creating and communicating stories. It's all about stories, and you have to know your own story. This is something that I'll say over and over and over and over again. You need to, that little bit when you told me to introduce myself at the beginning, and I told you what my story is, I say that
You're a pretty good storyteller.
Thank you. Say that every day, right? You're introducing yourself to clients, you're in an interview, you're talking to recruiters, you're talking to colleagues, you're out for a coffee chat. You're always saying that story. So you need to come up with a strong, compelling story. And that story does not need to be, this is more getting into how, not as much as the skill, but we'll get back to the skill. That story needs to be compelling. It needs to be something that resonates, but it doesn't need to be a crazy accomplishment, right? It could be
something to which people relate.
Something to which people relate. If one of the reasons why you've done something is because you wanted to learn more, that's a great reason to do something, right? And people will relate to that.
So if storytelling is the single most important skill, do you think that that will make introverted people significantly, it will make for them much more challenging to join consulting than extroverts?
No, not at all. And the reason why I say that is because storytelling isn't just voice, right? It's not just me talking to you. It's also on paper, right? A lot of the storytelling that we're doing is within slides. It's within data. And it's bringing out the insights in data to create something actionable. So just me personally, when I say storytelling, I firmly believe that every story has a problem and a solution, or is a series of and solutions. So your goal is to communicate what those problems are and what the solutions to those problems are.
Okay. Well, this is part of the reason why I decided to start this podcast, because I thought, like, what's the better way to develop my storytelling skill than actually, speaking live?
Yeah.
Okay. Second question I have is, what's the most common mistake you see first year associates? I know you are kind of first year
like
associates.
it's no, I think there's some common mistakes that occur, that I had during my pre-graduate experience as well, that I did and I saw a lot. One of the most common ones that you see is, and I did this as well, where you create a deliverable and then your team really likes it, and then you expand on that deliverable and you don't have enough time for your team to review it, but you're really excited, and you think you did great work, and then you decide to show it off to a broader team, or ideally not to a client, but that does happen. And then someone senior has to pull back, right? Because maybe you've made a promise that you don't fully understand, or you're presenting something that actually doesn't really provide a lot of value, and it's just taking up time, and you don't realize it because you're just a few months in and you're getting really excited, and you're just happy to be there. The great thing is, I found with that mistake is it's a telltale sign, and everyone recognizes this, that you're really, really good at something, and you're excited that you're good at something, and you want to continue to be good at it. Like for me, it was a Power BI dashboard, and I made a Power BI dashboard. This was, once again, during my pre-graduate experience at Scotiabank, made a Power BI dashboard, presented to my boss. She really, really liked it. She wanted to present forward, and I was looking at, who we were going to present it to, and I said, oh, this is still Scotiabank. This is still internal. It's just some adjacent people. I've got this extra thing that I'm working on. Let me show them that as well. I shouldn't have done that. But the fact that I was able to create something else that was, even though it wasn't of value, it was still very good within Power BI. Like the fact that I was able to do that in that time frame just means that I'm getting very good with that tool. I'm getting really good with something. I just need to be more aware. So the rule is there, or the lesson learned there is always align, right? Always align with your team, always align with your partners, always align internally before you go and you present externally, right? And that is true within the compounds of your team and company, as well as, because I'm saying internal, external, but I want to be very, very clear. There's internal team, and then there's external team, right? There's internal company and then external company. I mean, like, internal team, right?
So you're basically saying that every time a team presents to an external client, they always need to be aligned with what they're saying, right? There needs to be no disagreement in what they
want alignment, yeah. Generally speaking, you want full alignment. You're one brand, you're one company, you're one face. And the big thing is the partners own the relationships. So this is true across all consulting. That's how it works. The partners are all focused on relationships. It's their face, it's their reputation, right? So they want to know, they want to see it. They want to know what you're producing before you go and you send it off.
What should someone do when they really believe that some idea is great, but the partner or the team kills it off?
Keep it in your back pocket, right? It's you don't know when it's gonna rear its head around, and when it could be used somewhere else. Something that I've also learned is, it's better to repurpose than to net new, because building net new is always, it takes more time, it takes more effort. But if you have content that you created, you've got a story that you created, and you can retool it for a new purpose, that's great. That saves everybody time. It saves everybody money. It's just
so use it for the next project.
I'm not saying use it for the next project, and that's what I was about to get to. It's just really important that you're not just reusing content for the sake of reusing content. And I'm saying reuse, but I don't mean reuse as in it's been used once, because it hasn't been used once. But I do mean, it is important that if you're making content, it is specific, right? Okay. But
and coming to your point about you developing this Power BI tool, one thing I found which is significantly more advantageous for those working in external consulting for something like IBM in comparison to doing a consulting type work in places like Scotia is that if you develop this tool successfully, it then can be used for more than one company, right? Because even if you develop the best Power BI tool in the world, Scotia will probably only use it themselves, right? They will
Yeah.
not sell.
Well, I mean, Power BI tool, I say tool, but it was a dashboard, right? And I'm saying tool just because it was just very interactive. But yeah, that's exactly right. You know, Scotiabank will use it, and then you can't use it outside. I've done other stuff within industries where ideas have come up, and I've decided to do things on the side, and I program it on the side, and it's mine, and then I end up using it in the workplace. And you have to be very, very careful in those matters because, first of all, you know, you can't, if you want to build something yourself and you want to use it outside the workplace, you can't
use company resources.
You can't use company resources, and you can't have the company coming back to you and saying, hey, that was an idea that you had while you were with us based on what you were doing with us, because then they can come back and they can.
So wait, so everything you developed while working at IBM would automatically become property of IBM if you use any of their resources, right? Is that what you're saying?
That's sort of they would have some claim to it. So you have to be very, very careful. Now,
this is actually the story why IBM hasn't been that successful in the PC market, because they haven't patterned the Microsoft software that they have like partnered with them. So I guess they're learning their lessons now.
Yeah, exactly. And well, it's every company, right?
Yeah.
Every company's like that. The moment you're hired by them, if you do any sort of outside business, you have to let them know it's in the contract, right? And you have to be very clear about what those lines are between the business that you're doing here and the other business. Like, for example, you know, with consulting, if you decide to do any sort of outside consulting, you have to make sure, there's no conflict of interest. You have to let the employer know, and it has to be, typically it has to be something that has nothing to do with the consulting that you're doing, right? So, you know, IBM does strategy consulting. I don't know, they don't do any sort of recruitment consulting. So if you want to go and coach or do some mentorship, that's probably fine. But once again, you would have to go, and this is true, like I said, this is true for every company.
Right, yeah. Right. Okay, the last question is your final advice for those who are trying to break into consulting and do what you're doing right now.
Yeah, great question. So I said the story piece. Know your story, and I can even dive a little bit into that in terms of building a story, something that's compelling. But further, we'll attach that on. You can spray and pray with your resume. That actually rhymed. I didn't mean for that to rhyme. You can spray and pray with your resume. Prepared? It doesn't actually rhyme. I'm thinking about the wording now. It doesn't actually rhyme. It just sounds like it. You can spray and pray with your resume, but it's a lot more effective and a lot more efficient to go to the networking events, go to your school organized in-person exclusive networking events. That's where you want to go.
I'm a big preacher of that. You know,
yeah. And you meet the people there, you meet the recruiter, and you've got your story ready. And what your story needs to say is why you're standing in front of them today, right? And once again, the reasoning for that could be very simple. It could be, hey, I did a business degree. I learned a little bit about consulting. Maybe I did this project. Maybe I did this initiative, and I really, really enjoyed it. I honed in on it. I really liked it. So I wanted to learn more about the consulting industry. I saw this event online. So I decided, you know what, let me sign up and let's go and see if I can learn more. And that's why I'm standing in front of you today, so that I can learn more about the consulting industry, so that I can maybe find a path in there. Maybe I can learn. It can be as simple as that. It just needs to be a story of why you're standing in front of them today. It needs to be compelling, and it needs to be relatable.
Ryan, been a pleasure. Thank you for coming.
Pleasure's all mine. Thank you.
Thank you.